And our first main topic of the day comes to us from Hugo from Rome. And Hugo writes, Cody, thank you so much for being you. Your swimming content pulled me back to the pool after 15 years off, and I'm happier than ever. Bless you. And thank you. My question is about Team USA swimmers getting paid. You mentioned in a previous episode that there's no salary for US national team athletes, which is crazy to me. I can't imagine. So how do those amazing athletes make money? Really hope we get your insight. Keep on crushing it. Thanks. All right. Thank you for that question, Hugo. And yes, I'm not sure if it was last week or the week before, but I did a segment on how U.S. national teamers don't get a salary. Basically, it was the benefits of being on the national team, what you get. And there's a handful of things, but I mean, you get offered really good health insurance, you get travel expenses covered and some reimbursement. And there's some other stuff as well, but there's no salary for being on the U.S. national team. I also covered in that video how to make the U.S. national team, right? Top 6 swimmers in all Olympic events in the United States. I mean, that's just the bulk of it. But how do these athletes make money? How do these athletes get a salary? Well, there is an opportunity for that through USA Swimming. And that comes through what we call APA, which stands for Athlete Partnership Agreement. Every year, USA Swimming has around 50 slots for APA, which means you get paid to train as a professional. I believe it's tied with the IOC, the USOC, the Olympic Committee. I'm not exactly sure where the funding comes from. I'm sure we could find that, but that's neither here nor there. Here's how it works. If you are ranked top 16 in the world in an Olympic event, you can qualify for APA, and you sign a contract with USA Swimming, and that contract basically means that you are training to better your position in the world. You are training to make big Team USA trips like the Olympics, and you have to provide USA Swimming with a calendar list of like the events you're going to compete in, basically a write-up of your training plan and how you plan to get there and all this stuff. And then you sign the contract, and in exchange, you also, as an athlete, have to do a certain number of appearances and events for USA Swimming. A lot of times those are speaking events or meet and greets or autograph sessions at a meet that USA Swimming is hosting. There's a long list of things, but it's really pretty minimal. There's really not a whole lot of obligation on the athlete's part. Now, APA is fairly substantial. If you're top 16 in the world and you qualify for APA as an American athlete, depending on the year, depending on how much money they have, it's anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000, which is a fairly minimal salary, but it's a salary. It's a salary. I'll never forget in 2014 when I first qualified for APA. And that was a life changer because for me, transitioning out of college, I didn't have any money, had no money. And my first 6 months of training as a pro, I had to detail motorcycles, wash cars, I had to really scrap and claw to make money just to pay rent. And then when I finally broke into the top 16 in the world and qualified for APA, like that money allowed me to just, as a kid that just lived in an apartment with a bunch of roommates right out of college, I didn't have a lot of expenses. So that $40,000 or $35,000 was life-changing, life-changing. And now the way that they select APA, it's like I said, everyone who is, depending on the year, it's top 16 in the world, your world ranking. Sometimes if they have less money, it's been top 12. Like sometimes the year before the Olympics, like 2023 or what was 2019, you would have to be top 12 in the world to qualify for APA. There are relay opportunities as well for a fraction of the funding. Say you're a relay swimmer, say you're 4th place in the country in the 200-meter freestyle, then you can qualify for some percentage of what the APA payment would be. And there have been times when athletes qualify top 16 in the world, but there's so many Americans that are top 16 in the world that some people don't get that funding. And then the decision as to who gets that funding comes down to where you rank in the top 16, right? Like what events are you? I think it was 2019. I was 15th in the world in one of the breaststroke events, and I didn't make APA. Although that year they said if you were top 16 in the world, you make APA. That's the benchmark. But they had that year, USA Swimming had so many people in the top 12 in the world that they ran out of funding. And then actually, to give USA Swimming a lot of credit, those athletes that were top 16 in the world, like myself, at that year, I think Ryan Lochte was also a guy who was maybe 15th in the world in one of the IMs. They then went out and found some funding for us. It wasn't the full amount, but it was something. So they do their best. Like, they do try and help the athletes. But to answer your question, Hugo, there is an option to get a salary for U.S. national teamers, but it's completely predicated on your world ranking. And it's hard because, you know, a lot of swimmers train year round and they only have a handful of meets where they really peak, right? You might only have 3 meets a year where you fully shave down, fully taper, and really hit a time that would put you in like the top 16 in the world. And if you have a bad year, or you have one bad long course season, sometimes that could be it. You know, and it's heartbreaking. It's happened to me. Like, I've missed APA by just a smidge before. I know a number of athletes that have. But yeah, there is that option. So that's essentially how that works. It's an agreement that you go into a contract with USA Swimming. There's not a whole lot of obligation on the athlete's part other than to prove that you're actively training, actively trying to get better, and you're on the warpath to trying to make the Olympics and represent Team USA. And then they provide that for you. So that's how that works. Thank you for that question, Hugo. I hope that helps.